The first time Jordan Williams zipped up his crisp blue uniform, he thought he was stepping into history. Growing up in a neighborhood where sirens were the nightly lullaby, he had promised himself that one day he would wear the badge, not to oppress, but to protect. His mother's proud tears that morning felt like a baptism. Her only son was going to be the change they always talked about. But inside the station, the smiles were thin. Some of his white colleagues welcomed him with handshakes that were too firm, their eyes lingering a second too long on the color of his skin. Others said nothing at all, except for the muttered jokes that floated across the locker room. Jordan told himself it didn't matter. Change was never easy. On the streets, the reactions cut even deeper. The same neighbors who once cheered for him now stared with narrowed eyes. A kid he had coached in basketball spat at his shoes, calling him a traitor. To them, the badge wasn't a shield of justice, it was a weapon of oppression. Between the walls of the precinct and the streets of his community, Jordan felt the weight of two worlds pressing down on his chest. Every call he answered, every arrest he made, every silence he swallowed pushed him further into a question he couldn't escape. Was he a bridge between two sides, or a man stranded in the middle of a battlefield with no side left to stand on? And as the city simmered with rising tension, Jordan would soon discover that wearing the uniform came with a price he might not be able to pay. The night before his first day on the job, Jordan Williams barely slept. His uniform, freshly pressed, hung on the closet door like a promise or a warning. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father's weary face. His father had been beaten by police when Jordan was just a boy, accused of stealing a wallet he never touched. That memory had shaped him. The sight of his father's swollen jaw, his mother's trembling hands, and the silence in their small kitchen afterwards. Jordan had sworn then that he would wear the badge one day, not to carry out injustice, but to stop it. Now the chance had come. At dawn, his mother was already awake, humming an old gospel hymn while frying eggs. "You look just like your uncle in that uniform," she said when he stepped into the kitchen. Her voice cracked with pride. "But different, too. You're going to make a difference, Jordan. I know it." He smiled, though his stomach churned. "That's the plan, Ma." When he walked into the precinct, his chest swelled with determination. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the air smelled faintly of stale coffee and gun oil. Officers clustered in groups, laughing, sharing stories, their voices bouncing against tiled walls. Conversations dimmed when Jordan passed. A few gave curt nods, others looked through him as if he were invisible. "Williams," barked Sergeant O'Connor, a grizzled veteran with sharp eyes. "You're with me today. Ride along." "Yes, sir." O'Connor sized him up. "From Eastwood, huh?" "Yes, sir." "Figures." The sergeant smirked, but didn't explain. They climbed into the squad car. O'Connor drove in silence for the first 10 minutes, knuckles tight on the steering wheel. Finally, he spoke. "Listen, kid, you want to survive in this job. You keep your mouth shut, do what you're told, and don't play hero. Got it?" Jordan nodded, though the words twisted inside him. He hadn't joined to be silent. Their first call came quickly, a shoplifting at a corner store. When they arrived, a teenage boy stood against the wall, trembling, a candy bar sticking out of his pocket. The store owner, an elderly white man, shouted, "I want him arrested! Thieves ruin this neighborhood!" O'Connor sighed, already reaching for his cuffs. But Jordan saw the boy's wide eyes, the thinness of his arms, the hunger etched into his face. He remembered himself at that age, sneaking food from neighbors' porches because his family couldn't always afford groceries. "Sir," Jordan said carefully, "maybe we can handle this without charges. First offense. He's just a kid." O'Connor's eyes narrowed. "You're a cop or a social worker?" Jordan's jaw tightened. "Both, maybe." The sergeant cuffed the boy anyway, muttering, "You'll learn." On the ride back, O'Connor didn't speak. Jordan stared out the window, his reflection blurred in the glass, wondering if he had already failed. That evening, when he returned to his neighborhood in uniform, the air grew colder. A group of teenagers leaned against a stoop, eyes following him. One of them, Malik, a boy Jordan once coached in basketball, spat on the sidewalk. "Sell out," Malik muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. Jordan froze. The word stung more than O'Connor's dismissal. Malik had once looked up to him. Now, he looked at him like an enemy. Jordan walked on, each step heavier. For the first time, the badge on his chest felt less like a shield and more like a burden. That night, lying awake, he thought, what if the uniform doesn't fit me at all? What if it never will?
The days that followed blurred together like rain streaks on a windshield. Morning briefings, patrols, reports. Jordan was learning the rhythm of the job, but every beat seemed off-key. Inside the precinct, jokes slid across locker room benches like knives wrapped in laughter. "Don't run too fast, Williams. Might mistake you for the perp. You sure you know how to use that taser? Don't want you confusing it with fried chicken." The words were always delivered with chuckles, pats on the back, or "just kidding" smiles. But the sting lingered. Jordan laughed along sometimes, not because it was funny, but because silence felt like surrender, and protest felt like suicide. Yet silence came with a cost. Each time he bit his tongue, he felt the uniform getting tighter, suffocating. One evening, O'Connor pulled him aside after roll call. "You got potential, kid, but don't rock the boat. Guys here, they respect loyalty. Keep your head down, you'll fit in." Fit in. The words clanged in Jordan's head. Fit into what? A system built to ignore people like him? On the streets, the divide was sharper. Children who once chased his car for candy now turned their backs. A neighbor crossed the street when he walked by in uniform. In the barber shop, a place where laughter and storytelling usually flowed, conversations went silent the moment he entered. At home, his mother tried to reassure him. "They'll see in time. Good deeds speak louder than rumors." But her eyes betrayed her worry. The breaking point came one humid Friday night. A call crackled through the radio. Suspicious male, possibly armed, loitering near 7th and Pine. Jordan and O'Connor arrived to find a young black man standing outside a closed front store, hoodie up, hands in his pockets. He looked about 19. His phone glowed faintly in his hand. "Hands where I can see him," O'Connor barked, gun already drawn. The boy froze, confusion flashing in his eyes. "I'm just waiting for my ride." "Shut up! Hands!" Jordan's pulse thundered. He saw terror in the boy's trembling hands. He saw his own reflection in the wide, pleading eyes. "Sergeant, it's just a phone," Jordan said, stepping forward cautiously. "No weapon." O'Connor shot him a glare. "You can't be sure. Stay back." The boy's hand shook harder. His phone slipped, clattering to the pavement. O'Connor's finger tightened on the trigger. Jordan moved without thinking. He stepped between them, raising his palms. "He's unarmed. Look, just a phone. Let's slow down." The world held its breath. Then, reluctantly, O'Connor lowered his weapon. The boy ran the moment he could, disappearing into the shadows. Back in the squad car, O'Connor's silence was heavier than gunmetal. Finally, he snarled, "Don't you ever undermine me again. You hesitate like that, you put both our lives at risk." Jordan stared out the window, jaw clenched. But what echoed louder than O'Connor's fury was the memory of the boy's terrified eyes. That weekend, Jordan visited his neighborhood church. After service, Malik cornered him outside. "You think standing in that uniform makes you one of them?" Malik's voice was sharp, bitter. "Out here, you ain't one of us anymore." "I'm trying to protect you," Jordan said, frustration cracking his tone. "Protect me?" Malik laughed coldly. "From who? From cops like you?" The words cut deep, deeper than any insult from the precinct. For the first time, he felt truly homeless. rejected by the system he swore to change, and abandoned by the community he swore to defend. That night, he sat at his desk staring at his badge, its metal gleam cold under the lamp. His father's bruised face haunted him. His mother's hopeful tears replayed in his mind. And somewhere in the darkness, a question grew louder. What if both sides are right? What if I don't belong to either?
The city simmered like a pot left too long on the stove. A string of police confrontations had already sparked whispers of protest. Each one lit another fuse, and the tension was beginning to hum in the air. Jordan felt it every shift, streets quieter than usual, eyes following squad cars with suspicion, voices lowered as uniforms passed. Then it happened. A call blared over the radio one Tuesday night. Officer-involved incident at Lincoln Square, requesting backup, possible riot forming. O'Connor floored the accelerator. Jordan braced against the dashboard as lights streaked across the windshield. When they arrived, the scene exploded before him. Flashing sirens, officers forming a shaky line, and a crowd swelling with rage. In the center lay a young man on the pavement, his face bloodied, his chest rising shallowly. An officer stood over him, baton still in hand. The crowd's fury was palpable. "You murdered him! Another one of us down! No justice! No peace!" Phones were raised high, recording every second. The chants grew louder, rawer, more dangerous. Jordan's stomach dropped when he recognized the young man. It was Darius, Malik's cousin, a kid Jordan had once helped with homework after basketball practice. He pushed forward, but O'Connor's hand clamped his arm. "Stay back. Let the unit handle it." "Handle it?" he hissed. "They're the ones who did this." "Watch your mouth." O'Connor's voice was ice. "You're a cop first. Remember that." But Jordan couldn't. He knelt beside Darius, checking his pulse. Still there, faint but fighting. "Call an ambulance now!" he barked at the nearest officer. The officer sneered. "Already did. He'll live." The crowd surged against the police line. Bottles flew. A chant of "Justice! Justice!" shook the square. Jordan looked up and saw Malik in the front row, eyes burning with betrayal. "You see now?" he shouted at him. "This is who you stand with?" Jordan's chest tightened. He wanted to scream that he didn't, that he had joined to stop exactly this. But the badge on his chest shone under the streetlights, louder than words. The situation teetered on chaos. One wrong move and the square would ignite. Jordan stood, raising his arms toward the crowd. "Listen to me!" he shouted. His voice cracked, barely audible over the chants. "Darius is alive. He's gonna make it. Don't give them an excuse to hurt more of us." Some faces softened, torn between rage and hesitation, but others only jeered louder. Behind him, O'Connor muttered, "You're making us look weak." "Maybe we are weak," he shot back, his voice low but sharp. For the first time, he didn't care who heard. The ambulance finally arrived, cutting through the tension. Paramedics rushed Darius onto a stretcher, wheeling him away. The crowd roared, pushing closer. Officers raised batons. Jordan stepped between them. "No, not like this! Back off!" The line faltered. The crowd's fury began to fracture into confusion. Cameras captured everything. Jordan's outstretched arms, the defiance on his face, the badge gleaming against the storm. Hours later, when the square finally emptied, Jordan sat alone in the locker room. Sweat clung to his shirt, his hands still trembling. O'Connor walked in, lips pressed tight. "You embarrassed this department tonight." Jordan met his gaze. "No, I showed them what protecting and serving actually looks like." The silence between them was thick, dangerous. O'Connor leaned close, his voice a growl.
You keep this up, Williams, and the uniform will chew you up and spit you out. And when it does, don't think your people will take you back either." He left, boots echoing like gunshots down the hall. Jordan sat staring at his reflection in the locker mirror, sweat-soaked, exhausted, torn apart. The uniform hung heavy on his body. For the first time, he wondered if there would come a day when the uniform didn't just fail to fit, but consume him whole.
Days after the Lincoln Square incident, the city felt like a tinderbox. Protest flyers littered the sidewalks. Murals of Darius's bruised face bloomed on brick walls. And everywhere Jordan went, he heard whispers. Traitor. Hero. Sellout. Brother. Darius survived, but barely. His jaw was wired shut, ribs cracked, spirit shaken. When Jordan visited him in the hospital, Malik stood guard at the door. "You think showing up here makes you one of us again?" Malik asked, arms crossed. "I'm not here for me," Jordan said quietly. "I'm here for Darius." Malik's glare softened for a moment, but only for a moment. "You keep wearing that badge, you'll always be one of them." Inside, Darius's eyes lit faintly when he saw Jordan. He scribbled a note on a pad the nurse left by his bed. "You stopped him. Thank you." Jordan swallowed hard. He wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe one act of defiance could erase a system of pain. But the badge on his chest felt heavier than ever. 2 nights later, everything unraveled. Another call, another confrontation. This time, shots were fired. Jordan and O'Connor arrived to find chaos. A black teenager, no older than 16, lying motionless in the street. Officers shouted conflicting orders. The crowd swelled, grief turning into fury. Jordan's heart cracked open. He recognized the boy. Andre, a quiet kid who used to draw superheroes in the margins of his school books. He was gone. The crowd screamed for justice. Bottles smashed, fireworks exploded, the air was thick with rage. And then someone pointed at Jordan. "Look at him! He's one of them! He'll cover it up just like the rest!" Dozens of eyes locked on him. His community, his neighbors, his mother somewhere in that crowd, tears glistening. Jordan raised his hands, his voice breaking. "I'm not covering anything up. Andre deserves the truth. All of you do." O'Connor stormed toward him. "Shut your mouth, Williams. Get back in line." But Jordan didn't move. Not this time. He stepped forward, between the wall of officers and the sea of grief. Cameras glowed again, recording every second. "This has to stop, right here, right now. If wearing this uniform means staying silent while kids die, then I don't want it." And before the entire city, Jordan unclipped his badge and dropped it onto the pavement. The metallic clang echoed louder than the shouts. The crowd roared, not in hatred, but in something else: relief, vindication, a spark of belief. O'Connor's face twisted with fury. "You're finished." Jordan met his eyes. "No, I'm free." The fallout was swift. The department suspended him. Reporters swarmed. Neighbors, who once turned their backs, now shook his hand, though some still questioned his loyalty. Malik approached him days later, gaze heavy with respect he couldn't put into words. "You did what none of us could," Malik finally said, "but it cost you everything." Jordan looked down at his empty chest, the spot where the badge once gleamed. "Not everything. I still have a voice. Maybe that's enough." Weeks later, Jordan stood at a rally in Lincoln Square, microphone trembling in his hand. Thousands gathered, faces young and old, angry and hopeful. "I wore that uniform because I wanted to protect people," he began. His voice wavered, but then grew steady. "But a uniform can't protect if it's built on silence. Tonight I stand not as a cop, not even as a symbol, just as a man who refuses to stay quiet.
And I know I'm not alone. The crowd erupted. Chants of justice thundered against the night sky. Jordan stepped back, breathless. For the first time, the weight on his chest was gone. No badge, no uniform, just truth. And though he didn't know what came next, what battles, what sacrifices, he knew one thing for certain. The uniform never did fit, but maybe his voice always would.